Hi, friends. Welcome back to another Off the Cuff. Starting to move backwards into the movies we've already done for the Let's Say Nice Things About series. So I did Exodus, Gods and Kings, and today's is going to be Star Trek the Motion Picture because I love Star Trek and I could talk about Star Trek all day, every day. Um, so yeah, let's get into it. I'm going to look at critic reviews, audience reviews, and I'll give you some of my thoughts on some of their critiques. This one is from Terry Grimley from the Birmingham Mail. In fact, so much more was apparently spent on the effects than on the script that the chief mystery is why there's so little action and so much dialogue. I mean, that's one of the knocks of this movie that everybody gives it, right? That it's very slow, it's very ponderous, it's very um, European style directing, very long scenes. Um, But I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by action, right? Like, this is clearly not a Wrath of Khan. This is clearly not a Star Trek First Contact. Um, and I think part of the issue here is that this movie was partly run, well, I shouldn't even say partly, a lot run because Star Wars' success was huge. Um, and Paramount was like, well, what do we have that we could compete with Star Wars? Like, oh, we got this Star Trek thing we can dust off. So 10 years after this series is done, they did the movie. Um, and I think it comes from a lack of understanding of what Star Trek is. So if you come off Star Wars and people are like, oh, this is Paramount's counter to Star Wars. Like, this is not Star Wars. This is not going to be Star Wars. This will never be Star Wars. It's always going to be a bit more thoughtful, and it's always going to be a bit more slow. So yeah, I mean, I think yeah, there's not a ton of action in it for sure, but Star Trek, generally speaking, is going to be more dialogue heavy. Um, a lot of the actors that come into Star Trek are theater actors. They're Shakespearean. William Shatner is uh, a Shakespeare style actor, so everything is going to be a lot more dialogue heavy than effects heavy or effects focused. And that's not to say Star Wars is poorly written because it's not. Just Star Wars does action really well, and Star Trek does too when it wants to, but a lot of the times it's going to focus on the dialogue. Next one. Brian Eggert from Deep Focus Reviews. The film lacks almost every joyous attribute carried by the television show, regardless of its technical merits. I mean, it's an interesting, it's an interesting take because it is definitely not going for the campy style that the original series has. Um, it's not, it's not quote unquote fun. It's very serious. We're dealing with the Earth being in danger, and yeah, it's not a quote unquote joyous or fun movie in that regard. But that being said, near the end, you do get, like I talk about in the review, you do get Spock and Kirk and McCoy starting to act like themselves. There's a little bit more banter. There's a little bit more, um, well, they're calling our bluff, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting take that it's not quote unquote joyous. Let's see, what else do we have here? There's actually weirdly a lot of positive reviews. Um, This one from Tony Black from the Cultural Conversation. Visually and thematically, the motion picture is as pure and honorable to the history and themes of Star Trek as anything before or since. Again, that was one of my things with this movie is that it is maybe not the best Star Trek movie, but it's the most Star Trek feeling Star Trek movie. It gets everything that Star Trek tries to be. Um, See, and then this one, Mike Massey with Gone with the Twins. The special effects aren't bad for the late 70s, but they're not pushed far enough to surpass peers. I mean, again, if you're focusing purely on the effects, I mean, I would still disagree with that statement because I think the effects are really, really good, even if you consider they're in the 70s. This movie looks a lot better than um, this movie looks a lot better than a lot of movies, even moving forward. You think of some of the '80s movies that look really cheesy. This movie looks really good. Um, let's see some more negative ones. Mm, this 1979 movie adaptation of the cult TV series is blandness raised to an epic scale. I mean, interesting. I don't know. I guess I'd have to go look at the full review, and I'm feeling lazy to do that. But it's an interesting take because again, if you're talking about it being just a bland movie, I mean, again, I would have to disagree because there's a lot of great stuff in it. There's a lot of great scenes. There's a lot of great visuals. There's a lot of great. You see the contrast of um, the characters where they start and where they end, even without considering the television show. There's definitely it. Obviously, you would want to watch the show to get the full grasp of what's happening in the movie, but you don't necessarily have to watch the television series to understand where this is all coming from, even just in a cultural way. You know, you get Kirk is friends with Spock, and then you can kind of move on from there. Um, let's see what else is there. As an exploration of loneliness, of a unique machine consciousness, great. As an exciting sci-fi experience, maybe not. See, again, I think that is just a misunderstanding of the movie. Um, I think that's just a misunderstanding of the movie that it is Star Trek, it is science fiction in that purest sense. This one too. If endless interstellar vistas of 2001: A Space Odyssey tested your patience, Star Trek: The Motion Picture will make you cry like a little star child. I mean, again, I think that's understanding. That's misunderstanding. In this case, both 2001: A Space Odyssey and Star Trek. Again, the movies are just very slow. They're going to be very thoughtful. They're going to be very um, deliberate with what they're doing. Um, yeah. Let's see. Star Trek's freshman big screen effort was crippled by plodding pace and a somber tone. Again, I think it's just a misunderstanding what the movie is trying to do. Um, it is going to be slow. It is going to be ponderous. It is not Star Wars. It is not any of these other. It's not. It's not going to be fast paced. That's not what it was trying to be or trying to do. Um, let's see what some of the audience ones are here. Half a star. This is the only Star Trek movie that I'll never watch again. This movie has no entertainment value whatsoever. It's truly awful. March 31st, 2025, um, is when this one was written. Again, I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but I think a lot of it just comes down to what are you going in looking for in a movie. Um, let's see. Nice try to recreate the original movie, but overdone to the hilt. I always thought that Star Trek: The Motion Picture and Star Trek V: The Final Frontier were the worst Star Trek films ever made, but this complete remake of the first film bumps them both. So much for superfluous fill, scenes that never end, so slow moving to the point of tedium. Nice try, but it didn't work. This might be in reference to the director's cut that recently came out. Um, which adjusts some of the scenes, it adjusts some of the effects, and it adds a little bit of dialogue here and there, but it doesn't add too much. It adds maybe 10 minutes total of extra film or extra footage. It yeah, again, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I'll totally acknowledge that. But I think if you come into this movie with the right frame of mind, you're really going to enjoy it. It's very again, it's very slow. You know what it is? Star Trek: The Motion Picture is probably the best movie to watch on some sort of substance. If you are on a substance of some sort, it's probably the best at its best there. But I'm just always high on Star Trek, so maybe I'm not the right person to be trying to talk critically and looking critically at these particular critiques of it. Um, let's see, worst Star Trek movie ever, complete waste of time and a blot on the name of Star Trek. I mean, I would wholeheartedly disagree with that. Um, let's see, what are some good reviews? Wonderful movie, great story and visuals, too deep for the average Trekkies who are caught in internal puberty. I wouldn't go that far. I love that though. That's amazing. Oh, let's see. I like this movie the more I think about it. As just recently as getting into Star Trek, this movie really complements the original series while starting a new adventure. 8.5 out of 10. Glad someone enjoyed it. um, by no means terrible, but a mediocre Star Trek version of 2001: Space Odyssey, and can be considered bad if compared to other redos of 2001, like Close Encounters of the Third Contact and etc. Despite being visually dazzling and having some good sound design and some thought-provoking themes, just like 2001, but Robert Weiss is no Stanley Kubrick. 5.5 out of 10. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about that because Robert Weiss as a whole is a wide range director. He did the original The Day the Earth Stood Still. He did Sound of Music. Um, so I don't know. I mean, Um, they're different for sure, but I wouldn't say Robert Weiss is inferior to Stanley Kubrick in that regard. He's a very versatile director. Let's see. 40% rating, terrible storyline with a villain that's basically a cloud. Had some decent sci-fi special effects for the 70s, but overall lackluster film. Again, you have to be really in for the 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 thought-provoking part of the movie, and it's not for everybody. I'm not going to sit here and say it's the bee's knees or it should be critically acclaimed across the board. I just don't think it deserves quite as much hate as it gets. Um, it's just overall, it's just really such a good movie, in my opinion. Again, I might be too close because I just love Star Trek and everything to do with it. Let's see if we can find one more review here to touch on. Oh, that one looks a little long. Let's see. Yeah, what was it? Oh gosh. There's one that was like not a bad movie, but best on hallucinogenics. Again, would be funny. Uh, yeah, this is my least favorite Star Trek film. With it just being very slow paced and slightly boring, and there's not anything special about this film. Again, to each their own. I might be too close to the situation because I think it's a great movie. Again, is it the best Star Trek movie? Probably not. For me personally, I might put it in the top five. Um, but also take that with a grain of salt because while I recognize it has some really good writing, I'm not a huge fan of Star Trek 4, and Star Trek 4 is pretty universally loved. I think some of the references in that one are a little dated, and it definitely feels like an 80s movie because they're in the 80s. And generally speaking, in Star Trek, I hate it when the ship goes back in time or the crew goes back in time to present day Earth. I just generally can't stand that. And maybe it's because I use Star Trek as an escape. So it's really hard when it's like, oh, let's go to 1987 Earth or let's go to 1999 Earth in the case of, I think it's Voyager does that or 1997. Um, but yeah, so again, I might be too close. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you stuck around for my rambling, I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day and I hope you enjoy what I'm doing. If you do, please like, subscribe, all that fun jazz. Hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.